Have you ever caught yourself repeating the same mental mistakes, even when you know better? Why do we keep falling into patterns of worry, frustration, or self-sabotage, despite our best intentions? It's a question that's haunted thinkers for centuries, and the Stoics, those ancient masters of calm and clarity, had a surprising answer. They believed our suffering doesn't come from the world itself, but from the traps we unknowingly set in our own minds. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, put it simply: men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. In other words, the real prison isn't life's challenges, it's the way we interpret them. But here's the good news: those mental traps aren't inescapable. The Stoics didn't just diagnose the problem, they left us a toolbox of wisdom to break free. Think about the last time you spiraled into anxiety over something you couldn't control, or wasted energy resenting a situation instead of adapting to it. These aren't just fleeting emotions, they're psychological traps, and they've been tripping people up for thousands of years. The fascinating part: the Stoics mapped them out with startling precision, offering timeless strategies to sidestep them. That's what we're exploring today: 30 of the most common cognitive pitfalls the Stoics warned us about, and exactly how to avoid them. This isn't about abstract philosophy, it's about practical power. Imagine navigating daily stress with unshakable focus, turning obstacles into opportunities, and finally breaking cycles of overthinking and regret. That's the promise of Stoicism, and it's why these ideas have endured for millennia. Whether you're facing pressure at work, turbulence in relationships, or just the ordinary chaos of modern life, the Stoics' insights are shockingly relevant. So let's dive in. We'll start with the traps that hijack our peace of mind, then move to the ones that distort our decisions, and most importantly, how to rewire your thinking to stay clear-headed, resilient, and free. Ready to see the world and yourself differently? Let's begin. The Stoics knew something we often forget: our minds can be our own worst enemies when they spin endlessly without purpose. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the antidote to overthinking, recognizing the difference between what we can change and what we can't. Picture this: you're staring at your inbox, paralyzed by which email to answer first. You weigh every option, imagining worst-case scenarios for each choice. But here's the hard truth the Stoics would point out: the more time you spend analyzing, the less time you spend doing. Overthinking isn't preparation, it's procrastination in disguise. Modern life feeds this trap. We replay conversations, obsess over tiny decisions, or spin stories about what might happen. The Stoics called this the vanity of speculation, wasting precious mental energy on hypotheticals instead of engaging with the real world. Think of it like a boat anchored in place, its engine running but going nowhere. All that churning water, that's your mind when it overthinks. Marcus Aurelius had a remedy. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? Try applying that today. The next time you catch yourself looping over a problem, pause. Ask, can I actually control this? If the answer's yes, take the next obvious step, no more, no less. If it's no, practice the Stoic art of letting go. Here's a challenge. Pick one area where overthinking steals your time. Maybe it's second-guessing your career path or agonizing over an awkward comment you made. Now apply the Stoic filter. Write down 3 facts about the situation: what happened, what you control, and one concrete action you could take. Then, and this is key, act on just that one thing. The Stoics weren't against deep thought. They were against thought that doesn't serve a purpose. Clarity comes from engagement, not rumination. As Seneca put it, there are more things to alarm us than to harm us, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Your mind is a tool, not a treadmill. Use it to build, not to spin. Ever notice how frustration builds when you're stuck in traffic, watching the minutes tick by? Your grip tightens on the wheel, your schedule unravels, but no amount of honking or lane switching makes the cars ahead move faster. The Stoics would nod knowingly at this scene. They called it the illusion of control, one of the sneakiest traps our minds set for us. Epictetus drew a line straight down the center of human experience. Some things are up to us and some things are not. Sounds simple, right? Yet how often do we exhaust ourselves trying to commandeer the uncontrollable other people's opinions, flight delays, even the weather? Take a mundane example. You've planned an outdoor picnic for weeks. The forecast shifts last minute, rain clouds gather, and suddenly your mood darkens with the sky. Here's the Stoic twist. Your disappointment isn't about the rain. It's about the unspoken expectation that the universe owed you sunshine. That's the illusion at work, mistaking preference for promise. The ancient Stoics practiced a radical shift in perspective. Instead of resenting storms, they'd ask, what if this downpour is exactly what's needed for the crops? Or more pragmatically, since I can't stop the rain, how can I adapt? This isn't passive resignation. It's strategic focus. Imagine your energy as a limited resource. Every drop spent raging against traffic or cancelled plans is energy stolen from what you can influence: your attitude, your next move, your ability to improvise. Try this exercise now. Grab paper and jot down 3 things that gnaw at you regularly. Maybe a colleague's habit of interrupting, the stock market swings, or your neighbor's loud music. Now cross out everything on that list that depends on others' choices or random chance. What remains? That's where your power lies. The brilliance of Epictetus' dichotomy isn't just in separating control from chaos, it's in redirecting attention to the fertile ground within our reach. Consider the archer from Stoic metaphor. She can aim carefully, train diligently, and release the arrow with perfect form, but once it's airborne, wind or luck decides where it lands. Obsessing over the target, that's the illusion. Mastery lies in loving the craft, not the outcome. So next time you catch yourself clenching over circumstances beyond your command, pause. Hear Seneca's whisper: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The rain was never yours to govern, but carrying an umbrella that always was. Chasing approval from others is like building your house on shifting sand. The moment the winds of opinion change, your foundation crumbles. Seneca saw this trap clearly. What does it matter how much you have if you envy those who have more? That sting you feel when a post gets fewer likes than expected, or the knot in your stomach before presenting an unconventional idea at work. Those aren't just passing emotions, they're warning signs that you've handed your self-worth to someone else's keeping. The Stoics called this the slavery of reputation, and 2,000 years before social media, they already knew its dangers. Think about how often we measure our days by external metrics: the boss's nod of approval, the number of followers gained, even the polite smile from a stranger at the coffee shop. Now imagine carrying a scale everywhere, constantly weighing yourself against these fleeting reactions. That's the exhausting reality of living for validation. Marcus Aurelius offered a liberating alternative in his Meditations. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Why would you outsource your sense of worth to people who barely know you, whose own judgments are often clouded by biases and bad moods? Social media amplifies this trap with algorithmic precision. Every scroll through curated feeds whispers the lie that popularity equals value. But here's what the Stoics understood: applause is fickle, criticism is inevitable, and both are equally irrelevant to your character. When a heckler interrupted one of Epictetus' lectures, the philosopher simply replied, "If someone told me that my ship had sunk with all my cargo, I wouldn't assume the messenger caused my misfortune." Other people's words only have the power you give them. Try this Stoic reframe next time you catch yourself anxiously checking for reactions, whether to an outfit, a work project, or a controversial opinion pause. Ask yourself 3 questions. Does this person's judgment align with my deepest values? Would I respect their advice on completely unrelated matters? And if their opinion vanished tomorrow, would what I did still feel meaningful? The answers reveal whose approval truly matters, and it's a far shorter list than we pretend. Seneca warned his friend Lucilius about the validation treadmill. You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. How much time has already gone by, you take no heed. That's the heart of it. When we waste days tailoring ourselves to others' expectations, we're trading finite life for empty noise. True freedom comes when you stop asking, "Do they approve?" and start asking, "Does this align with who I choose to be?" The Stoics didn't advocate indifference to others, but rather a fierce loyalty to your own reasoned principles. After all, if you wouldn't let a stranger dictate your diet or sleep schedule, why let them govern your self-esteem? There's a particular kind of mental trap that turns minor worries into full-blown disasters, where a missed call becomes a sign of impending doom, or a slight headache convinces you it's something terminal. The Stoics had a name for this: catastrophizing, the habit of letting fear paint worst-case scenarios as inevitable. Marcus Aurelius faced this same human tendency centuries ago, and his remedy was something called premeditatio, malorum Latin for the premeditation of evils. But don't let the phrase mislead you. This wasn't about dwelling on doom, it was about disarming it. Imagine you're lying awake at night, convinced a rough week at work means you'll be fired. Your mind races: what if I can't pay rent? What if my career is over? The Stoics would interrupt that spiral with 2 blunt questions. Is this truly happening right now? And if it did, could I survive it? That's the power of premeditatio malorum. It's not about fearing adversity, but rehearsing your resilience. When Marcus wrote, "The cucumber is bitter, then throw it away. There are brambles in the path, then go around," he wasn't dismissing life's thorns. He was training himself to see solutions where others saw only ruin. Here's how to apply this today. Grab a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. In the first, write your current catastrophe. Maybe it's the fear of a failed project or a relationship ending. Now, in the second column, craft a Stoic response. Ask yourself, what's the actual evidence this will happen? If it did, what practical steps could I take? And what unexpected good might emerge? This isn't naive optimism, it's strategic clarity. The ancient Stoics knew that most of what we dread never arrives, and what does arrive is rarely as crushing as we imagined. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, put it starkly: man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems. That's the irony of catastrophizing. We suffer the disaster twice, once in our minds and once, if at all, in reality. By mentally walking through the worst case beforehand, you drain it of its terror. You might even spot opportunities hidden in the chaos. After all, a job loss could force a career pivot you'd been too comfortable to attempt. A breakup might create space for deeper connections. The next time your mind leaps to catastrophe, pause. Borrow Marcus Aurelius' morning ritual. As dawn broke, he'd remind himself, "Today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." Not to complain, but to prepare. That's the Stoic secret. Anticipating life's bumps doesn't make the road rougher. It gives you better shock absorbers. Your fears lose their fangs when you stop running from them and start examining them. As Seneca wrote, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. The catastrophe isn't the event, it's the endless rehearsal of suffering before the curtain even rises. Scrolling through social media, seeing friends post tropical vacations or career milestones, that pang in your chest isn't just envy, it's a cognitive trap the Stoics recognized 2,000 years ago. Musonius Rufus, the Roman philosopher who taught Epictetus, put it bluntly: why compare your life to others when you could be measuring it against your own potential? That ache we feel when someone gets the promotion, the house, the relationship we wanted, it's not about their success. It's about the story we tell ourselves: I'm falling behind. The Stoics saw this as a double theft. First, it steals joy from what you already have, and second, it distracts you from the only race that matters: becoming your best self. Think about how often we measure our worth by invisible scoreboards. A colleague's salary becomes a yardstick for our own value. A neighbor's renovation sparks dissatisfaction with a home that felt perfectly comfortable yesterday. This isn't just harmless observation, it's a mental habit that keeps us perpetually unsettled. Marcus Aurelius warned himself in his private writings: the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and comparing yourself to others is like drinking salt water to quench thirst. The more you indulge it, the more it dehydrates your peace. Modern life turbocharges this trap. Algorithms show us curated highlight reels while hiding struggles. We see the vacation photos but not the credit card debt, the job title but not the burnout. The Stoics proposed an antidote: redirect that competitive energy inward. Instead of asking, why don't I have what they have, ask, what would my life look like if I pursued only what truly mattered to me? Picture your ideal day, not the Instagram version, but the one that would leave you deeply satisfied. Maybe it's uninterrupted time to create, or quiet mornings with loved ones, or work that aligns with your values. Now notice how many of those things require someone else's validation or possessions. Musonius Rufus taught that envy dissolves when we focus on proherses, our power to choose our actions and attitudes. He trained his students to admire virtues, not possessions. When you catch yourself coveting someone's lifestyle, pause. Ask, what specific quality do I actually admire here? Is it their discipline, creativity? Courage, then cultivate that trait in your own way. If you envy a friend's freelance freedom, start building skills to eventually go independent. If you covet their fitness, design a sustainable routine for your body. Transform envy into a mirror that shows you unmet potential, not unearned lack. Here's a practical exercise. List 3 people you frequently compare yourself to, perhaps a sibling, a coworker, or even a celebrity. Now, next to each name, write down one thing they have that you genuinely desire. Be ruthlessly specific. Then cross out anything that depends on luck, genetics, or others' opinions. What remains are clues to your authentic aspirations. A Stoic would take this further. For each remaining item, plan one small action to move toward it without reference to anyone else's progress. That's the key: building a life where your sense of worth comes from showing up as your truest self, not from outrunning shadows. The irony, those we envy often struggle with the same trap. The entrepreneur with the sleek office worries about the competitor's valuation. The influencer with millions of followers fixates on the one who went viral. Comparison isn't just a thief of joy, it's a maze with no exit. Epictetus, born into slavery, understood this deeply. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Your path isn't lacking because it diverges from others. It's unique because it's yours alone to walk. The Stoic secret isn't to suppress ambition, but to direct it where it actually serves you, toward unbecoming the person you'd envy if you met them. That new phone you waited months to buy brings a rush of excitement for exactly 3 days. Then it's just another device on your desk. The vacation you meticulously planned gives you a glow that lasts until the first Monday back at work. This isn't coincidence, it's psychology. The Stoics identified this phenomenon centuries before modern science named it the Hedonic Treadmill, the endless chase for pleasure that leaves us perpetually one step behind satisfaction. Seneca saw through the illusion. It is not that we have so little time, but that we lose so much of it chasing desires that grow faster than we can fulfill them. Consider how this plays out in daily life. You tell yourself one more episode turns into an entire season wasted. A quick scroll through online stores becomes an unplanned purchase you'll forget by next week. These aren't harmless habits, they're traps wired into our biology. Every hit of dopamine makes the brain raise its threshold for the next reward, creating an exhausting cycle where yesterday's luxuries become today's necessities. The Stoics didn't advocate austerity, they practiced intentional enjoyment. Marcus Aurelius savored simple meals not because he couldn't afford feasts, but because he knew indulgence dulls appreciation. Here's the uncomfortable truth: your brain is addicted to wanting, not having. Retail therapy, binge watching, even constant checking of likes and notifications. These are all variations of the same treadmill. Seneca observed wealthy Romans who owned villas but kept building new wings, collecting art they never admired, hosting parties they didn't enjoy. He wrote, "Poverty is wanting much, not having little." That's the core insight. The treadmill isn't about what you acquire. It's about the restless hunger that remains no matter how much you consume. Try this experiment. Pick one. Empty pleasure in your routine may be mindless online shopping, doom scrolling, or sugary snacks. For 1 week, track how often you reach for it, not out of genuine need, but from habit or fleeting craving. Then apply the Stoic pause. Is this serving my deeper values or just filling a void? You'll likely notice something startling. The anticipation often feels better than the experience itself. That's the treadmill at work, the Stoic alternative: deliberate savoring. Instead of chasing 10 shallow pleasures, deepen your enjoyment of one meaningful activity. Cook a meal slowly and taste each ingredient. Walk without headphones and notice the rhythm of your breath. Read a book in one sitting instead of skimming headlines. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius, set aside a certain number of days where you'll be content with the plainest food and clothing. Then ask yourself, was I any less happy then? That's how you step off the treadmill, not by rejecting joy, but by resetting your capacity to truly feel it. Every craving whispers the same lie: this next thing will finally be enough. The Stoics reply, enough isn't out there, it's a decision you make right now. There's a dangerous story we tell ourselves when life gets hard, that the world is against us, that our struggles are uniquely unfair, that we're powerless to change anything. The Stoics had a name for this mindset, the victim mentality, and they considered it one of the most corrosive traps for human potential. Epictetus, who was literally born into slavery, dismissed this way of thinking with characteristic bluntness. It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. That's the heart of Stoic responsibility, recognizing that while we can't control every circumstance, we always control our interpretation and response. Picture 2 colleagues passed over for the same promotion. One spirals into resentment, convinced the boss has favorites. The other audits their own performance, identifies gaps, and starts acquiring new skills. Both face the same external event, but only the first is trapped in victimhood. This isn't about denying real injustice. It's about refusing to let injustice define you. The Stoics drew a crucial distinction between suffering and suffering meaningfully. When a storm sinks a ship, the captain isn't blamed for the weather, but they are responsible for how they navigated it. History offers striking examples. Take James Stockdale, the naval pilot imprisoned and tortured during the Vietnam War. For 7 years, his captors tried breaking him with isolation and brutality. Yet Stockdale, who credited Epictetus for his survival, later explained, "They could control my body, not my mind." He turned his cell into a classroom, mentally reciting poetry, designing aircraft in his head, even teaching fellow prisoners Stoic principles tapped out in Morse code. Upon release, he described his captors as unwitting liberators for forcing him to discover inner strength. That's the antithesis of victimhood, transforming oppression into opportunity. Now consider your own life. When your flight gets cancelled, do you fume at the airline or use the delay to finish that book? When a relationship ends, do you blame your ex or examine what the experience taught you about your needs? The shift isn't easy. Our brains are wired to seek external causes for discomfort. Neuroscientists call this the fundamental attribution error. We judge others' failures as character flaws, but our own as circumstantial. The Stoics hacked this bias by asking a radical question. What if the obstacle is the way? Try this reframe next time you feel wronged. First, name the external factor you're blaming: a rude comment, a missed opportunity, a bureaucratic delay. Now ask, what part of this situation did I actually control? Maybe it's as small as choosing not to retaliate or realizing you could have prepared differently. That tiny wedge of agency is where growth begins. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Here's the paradox: taking responsibility feels heavier initially but lighter in the long run. Victimhood does the opposite. It offers immediate relief. It's not my fault. But chains you to perpetual helplessness. Epictetus saw this clearly. No man is free who is not master of himself. When you stop blaming externals, you reclaim something priceless: the power to choose your next move. So next time life knocks you down, hear the Stoic whisper: you can't control the fall, only whether you rise with wisdom or resentment, the ground beneath you. That's always been your choice. Perfectionism might seem like a virtue. After all, who doesn't want to do their best? But the Stoics saw it for what it really is: a form of resistance to reality. Marcus Aurelius observed this in nature itself. The fig tree does what fig trees do. Even if the world ends tomorrow, let it still put forth leaves today. He wasn't praising half-hearted effort. He was highlighting the wisdom of embracing imperfection as part of the natural order. Think about a cracked vase repaired with gold, the Japanese art of kintsugi. Its beauty lies not in hiding the break, but in honoring it. That's the Stoic approach to imperfection, not as failure, but as texture. Consider how perfectionism plays out in daily life. You rewrite an email 10 times before sending it, agonizing over every comma. You delay launching a project because it's not ready, though ready is a moving target. Or worse, you avoid starting altogether, paralyzed by the fear of falling short. The Stoics would call this the tyranny of the ideal. It's not high standards that harm us, but the delusion that flawlessness is possible or even desirable. Seneca warned about this in his letters. Life is long if you know how to use it, but we waste much of it on impossible demands. Parenting reveals this trap vividly. A mother beats herself up for losing patience with her toddler, ignoring the 99 times she responded with grace. A father obsesses over providing the perfect childhood, mistaking curated experiences for genuine connection. The Stoic remedy: shift from judging outcomes to valuing effort. Marcus Aurelius, raising his own children amid empire and war, wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one, not a perfect one, a real one, flaws and all." Here's a challenge: pick one area where perfectionism slows you down. Maybe it's over editing work emails, rechecking household chores, or hesitating to share creative work. Today, deliberately leave it at good enough. Send that draft with a typo or two. Serve a slightly burnt cookie. Post the video before you've tweaked every frame. Notice what happens. The world doesn't end. People respond to your authenticity, not your polish, as Epictetus taught. If you seek truth, you won't care who speaks it. Truth, like excellence, isn't found in perfection, but in sincerity. The irony: nature's most resilient systems thrive on imperfection. Forests need lightning strikes to regenerate. Muscles grow through micro-tears. Even our immune systems strengthen by encountering germs. The Stoics saw human growth the same way. When we stop demanding flawlessness from ourselves, we free up energy for what actually matters: progress. So next time perfectionism whispers that you're not enough, answer with Marcus Aurelius' reminder: the art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. It requires readiness for rough handling and unexpected blows. Your cracks aren't proof of weakness, they're where the light gets in. There's a quiet desperation in constantly refreshing your feed, scanning for updates, terrified that somewhere, someone is having an experience without you. The Stoics recognized this anxiety long before it had a name. Seneca called it the disease of busyness. This frantic chase after every opportunity, connection, and experience lest we miss out. But here's the irony they uncovered: in straining to grasp everything, we actually hold nothing. Imagine carrying a sieve to a river, trying to collect every drop. The harder you clutch, the emptier your hands stay. That's FOMO in action, mistaking abundance for fulfillment. Consider how this plays out today. You're at dinner with friends, but your thumb hovers over your phone, just in case a better invitation comes through. You buy tickets to 3 concerts in one weekend, leaving no room to savor any of them. The Stoics would ask a piercing question: what are you missing by chasing what's missing? When Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it," he wasn't just criticizing distraction. He was exposing the poverty of a life lived in perpetual anticipation. FOMO isn't about seizing joy, it's about fearing that joy exists elsewhere. The antidote: Stoic contentment, a radical shift from scarcity to sufficiency. Picture 2 travelers. One races from landmark to landmark, snapping photos to prove they were there. The other sits quietly under a tree, noticing how sunlight filters through leaves. Both visited the same place, but only one truly experienced it. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not as morbid fatalism, but as liberation. If this moment might be your last, why spend it worrying about someone else's? Seneca's letters reveal a surprising truth about busyness. It's often avoidance in disguise. He described Romans who rushed about as if to overtake life itself, yet never paused to live. Sound familiar? The modern version might be hopping between networking events without deepening a single connection, or collecting hobbies like trading cards but mastering none. The Stoic alternative is depth over breadth. Instead of asking, "What am I missing?" ask, "What's here to be fully received?" That co-worker's party you skipped to recharge. The book you read slowly instead of skimming 10. Those aren't losses, they're choices to inhabit your life rather than haunt it. Try this experiment. For one evening, commit to a single activity. No multitasking, no checking alternatives. Cook a meal without podcasts. Watch a film without your phone. Notice how FOMO initially squirms, whispering that you should be doing more. Then comes the counterintuitive relief. By narrowing your focus, you actually expand your presence. Epictetus framed this as ownership. He is rich who is content with least, for contentment is nature's wealth. Your time and attention aren't lacking. They're just scattered across too many maybes. The deeper wisdom here, every yes to one thing is a no to countless others. And that's not deprivation, but definition. A sculptor doesn't mourn the chunks of marble they remove. They reveal the form within by clearing away distraction. Your life works the same way. When you stop chasing every shiny possibility, you uncover the shape of what actually matters. As Seneca put it, until we have begun to go without, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. FOMO fades when you realize the richest experiences aren't the ones you chase, but the ones you fully inhabit. The present isn't what you're missing, it's what you've been missing with. Your phone buzzes with a notification, and without thinking, your hand reaches for it. But what if that reflex is costing you more than you realize? The Stoics practiced a radical form of presence they called prosoch, or mindful attention. Marcus Aurelius put it starkly: you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. He wasn't being grim, he was highlighting a liberating truth. The present moment is the only place life actually happens. Yet how often do we sleepwalk through our days, physically here but mentally replaying yesterday's argument or scripting tomorrow's meeting? Take something as simple as a walk. Most of us do it while glued to screens, podcasts in our ears, texts flying back and forth, our surroundings just a blur. Now contrast that with Seneca's advice. Behold the stars as if you were seeing them for the first time. Try this today. Leave your phone behind and stroll around the block. Notice how the air feels against your skin. Really see the colors of the houses you pass every day. Hear the layered sounds of birds, footsteps, distant laughter. This isn't just relaxation, it's Stoic training. Every time you catch your mind drifting to the past or future, gently guide it back, like training a puppy to heel. That's prosoch in action, the discipline of showing up for your own life. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics knew. Our brains have a negativity bias, clinging to problems while letting ordinary beauty slip by unnoticed. Marcus Aurelius fought this tendency daily. In his private journal, he wrote, "Give yourself a gift, the present moment, not a vague platitude but a tactical reminder." When you're stuck in traffic, instead of fuming, really look at the sunlight reflecting off car windows. When washing dishes, feel the warmth of the water, the rhythm of the task. These aren't small moments, they're the fabric of existence. As Seneca noted, life is long enough if you know how to use it, but we chop it into worthless fragments by dividing our attention. Here's the challenge: pick one routine activity today: making coffee, brushing your teeth, waiting in line, and do it with full attention. No background music, no mental to-do lists. When your mind wanders, and it will, don't judge, just return again and again. This simple act trains what the Stoics considered our greatest power, the ability to choose where we place our awareness. Epictetus compared the mind to a bowl of water. When disturbed, it reflects nothing clearly. Your phone-free walk, your focused coffee ritual, these are ways to let the water still. Marcus Aurelius left us a question that cuts through centuries of distraction. Is this what I was made for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm? The answer echoes forward. You were made to be here, fully, courageously present. Not just for grand moments, but for the quiet ones too. The steam rising from your cup, the weight of a book in your hands, the way shadows lengthen across the floor as afternoon fades. These aren't gaps between important events. They're the substance of a life well lived. So ask yourself now, what's one thing, just one, you'll engage with completely today? Not for productivity or applause, but for the profound act of being alive to it. The Stoics would nod in approval. That's not just mindfulness, it's wisdom in motion. Losing a job title feels like losing part of yourself because in a way it is. We introduce ourselves by our roles. I'm a manager, I'm a student, I'm a parent. But the Stoics warned about over-identifying with transient labels, a trap that turns inevitable life changes into identity crises. Epictetus, who knew firsthand how quickly status can vanish, asked his students, if someone handed your body to a passerby, you'd be outraged. So why do you hand over your mind to anyone who insults you? That's the danger of tying self-worth to external roles. You give others power to define you. Consider retirement. After decades as the doctor or the teacher, suddenly that defining label slips away, and with it a sense of purpose. The Stoics would nod knowingly. They saw titles as costumes we wear, not the essence of who we are. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire yet reminded himself daily, you're just a little soul carrying around a corpse. Not to demean himself, but to remember that even an emperor's crown is temporary. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. Studies show retirees who define themselves solely by their careers struggle most with transition. Here's the hard truth, no role lasts forever. Careers shift, children grow, accolades fade. When a corporate executive loses their corner office or an athlete retires from the game, the pain isn't just about lost income or activity, it's about lost identity. Seneca witnessed wealthy Romans stripped of political power who became shells of themselves, writing, "No man was ever wise by chance. The wisdom lies in preparing for these transitions before they arrive." Try this Stoic exercise today. Write down 5 roles you currently hold, maybe employee, spouse, breadwinner. Now cross out each one mentally and ask who remains when these are gone. That core, your values, resilience, capacity to learn and love is your true self. Epictetus, born a slave, became a revered teacher not by chasing status but by embodying principles no owner could take: integrity, reason, inner freedom. History offers powerful examples. When Cato the Younger, a staunch Stoic, lost his political standing, he didn't crumble. He doubled down on philosophy, farming, and mentoring others. His identity wasn't in his title but his character. Contrast that with modern layoffs where professionals describe feeling erased after losing business cards. The difference: Cato knew his worth came from within. Many today outsource it to HR departments. This isn't about rejecting roles but holding them lightly. A parent can cherish raising children while knowing mom or dad isn't their entire being. A CEO can lead passionately yet recognize the board could vote them out tomorrow. The Stoic secret: role fluidity, the ability to adapt without fracturing. Marcus Aurelius practiced this by visualizing himself stripped of all titles. Soon you'll be ashes or bones. A mere name at best, and even that just a sound, an echo. So next time you're introduced at a party or filling out a form that asks occupation, pause. That label describes what you do, not who you are. As Seneca wrote to a grieving friend, nothing is ours except time, and even that we lose as fast as it comes. Your true self isn't in the business card you hand over, but in the handshake you offer after. Roles come and go, character is the constant. The office may take back your title, but no one can revoke your ability to choose kindness, curiosity, or courage, and those are the only identities that never expire. Holding onto anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer, a truth the Stoics understood long before modern psychology confirmed it. Seneca, who wrote extensively about anger's corrosive effects, compared grudges to carrying burning coals in your bare hands. No one can be angry and think clearly at the same time. That's the paradox of resentment. It feels like justice, but it's really a self-inflicted wound. Think about a conflict from your own past that still tightens your chest when you remember it. The other person may have moved on or even forgotten the incident, yet you're still paying the emotional tax. The Stoics called this the prison of the past, where you're both the inmate and the jailer. History offers a striking example in the feud between Cato the Younger and Julius Caesar. These political rivals clashed bitterly for decades, with Cato opposing Caesar's rise at every turn. Yet when Caesar finally seized power, he shocked Rome by offering Cato amnesty, not out of weakness, but because he recognized that forgiveness was a strategic advantage. The Stoic influenced Cato, though he refused the offer on principle, acknowledged the wisdom in breaking the cycle of vengeance. Both men understood what modern neuroscience reveals. Harboring resentment activates the same stress pathways as physical pain. When Seneca wrote, "Anger is an acid that does more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured," he wasn't preaching passivity, he was advocating for emotional efficiency. The real cost of grudges isn't just emotional, it's practical. Every moment spent rehearsing old grievances is a moment stolen from your present potential. Marcus Aurelius framed it as a theft of time. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Picture someone who wronged you years ago. How much mental real estate do they still occupy? The Stoics proposed a radical alternative, calculated indifference, not pretending the hurt didn't happen, but refusing to let it dictate your future. When the philosopher Cato was asked how to stop loving someone who betrayed him, he replied, "By remembering how little it matters in the end. Try this exercise today. Choose one lingering resentment, maybe a friend's careless remark or a coworker's unfair criticism. Write it down, then ask yourself 3 Stoic questions. Does holding this grudge improve my life? Could the person who hurt me actually change the past? And what might I gain by releasing it?" Then take the most liberating step, not reconciliation, not even communication, but simple internal release. Tear up the paper or toss it in flames, symbolizing your choice to stop feeding the anger. As Seneca observed, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. That email you've been drafting in your head for months, delete the draft, the apology you're waiting for. Stop waiting. The Stoic approach to forgiveness isn't about excusing harm. It's about reclaiming sovereignty over your inner world. Epictetus, who endured slavery, put it bluntly: if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. That's the heart of it. When you cling to a grudge, you grant the offender ongoing power over your peace. True strength lies not in remembering every slight, but in choosing which memories deserve your energy. So today, practice what Marcus Aurelius called the art of letting go, not because others deserve your forgiveness, but because you deserve your freedom. After all, the heaviest chains are the ones we refuse to unfasten. That text from your coworker that reads a little cold, was it intentional rudeness or just a rushed message written between meetings? The Stoics identified this mental shortcut as assuming intentions, where we convince ourselves we know others' motives without evidence. Marcus Aurelius, who dealt with court intrigues daily, warned himself, "When another blames you or hates you, go to their soul. Enter inside and see what kind of person they are. You'll realize there's no need to rack your brain figuring out what they think of you." That's the antidote to mind reading, curiosity over certainty. Picture this common scene. Your roommate leaves dishes piled in the sink again. Your first thought, they're disrespecting me. But what if they were running late after a terrible night's sleep? or genuinely forgot in their morning scramble, the Stoics would point out that your suffering here isn't caused by the dishes, it's caused by the story you attached to them. Epictetus framed this as a question of ownership. If someone speaks badly of you, that's their problem. Your problem, making sure you don't speak or act badly yourself. The dishes are real, the disrespect is optional. Modern psychology confirms this ancient insight with the fundamental attribution error, our tendency to explain others' behavior as character flaws. They're lazy, while excusing our own as circumstantial. I was exhausted. Seneca witnessed this in Roman politics, where senators would assume rivals acted from malice rather than competing priorities. He advised, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than reality." That email from your boss with the terse tone, the ignore that stung in a group chat, these become wounds only when we insist on interpreting them. Here's how to apply Stoic skepticism to your assumptions. Next time you feel slighted, pause. Ask yourself 3 questions. What's the bare fact here, separate from my interpretation? What innocent explanations exist? And if my assumption were wrong, how would I feel about my reaction later? Marcus Aurelius practiced this with political enemies, writing, "When people injure you, ask yourself, what good or harm did they think would come of it?" Suddenly, the coworker who interrupted you wasn't dismissing your idea. They were overeager to contribute. The friend who forgot your birthday wasn't neglectful. They're drowning in a personal crisis. Try this reframe today. Pick one recent interaction where you assumed negative intent. Maybe it was a partner's distracted look during your story, or a stranger's curt reply at the store. Now brainstorm 3 alternative explanations, 1 neutral. They were preoccupied with pain, 1 generous, they didn't realize how it came across, and 1 absurd, they mistook me for their arch-nemesis. Notice how the emotional charge shifts when the narrative isn't fixed. The Stoics didn't advocate naivety. They trained in distinguishing observable facts from subjective judgments. As Epictetus put it, it's not events that disturb people, but their judgments about events. The liberating truth, most people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you imagine. That comment you've replayed for days, the other person likely forgot it minutes later. Marcus Aurelius captured this in a journal entry. In the morning, when you rise unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to do the work of a human being. Extend that grace to others. The rude cashier might be grieving. The flaky friend could be battling anxiety. This isn't about excusing harm, but about freeing yourself from the exhausting work of mind reading, a job no Stoic ever applied for. Your peace is too valuable to spend on rehearsing conversations that only happened in your head. All or nothing thinking convinces us that if we can't run 5 miles today, we might as well skip the walk around the block too. It's the voice that says a single missed workout ruins your fitness streak, or that 1 slice of cake means your diet is broken. The Stoics saw this black and white mindset as a special kind of self-sabotage, one that mistakes perfection for progress. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, put it plainly: if you accomplish something good with hard work, the labor passes quickly, but the good endures. If you do something shameful in pursuit of pleasure, the pleasure passes quickly, but the shame endures. That's the heart of Stoic moderation, valuing consistent effort over dramatic but unsustainable bursts. Take something as simple as healthy eating. The all-or-nothing approach says, either I stick to this strict meal plan perfectly, or I've failed. What happens? You're flawless for 2 weeks, then a busy day leads to takeout, which spirals into a month of abandoned goals. Contrast that with Stoic pragmatism. Musonius taught that gradual improvement isn't weakness, it's strategy. He compared self-improvement to rowing upstream. Even slow, steady strokes move you forward, while frantic splashing exhausts you without progress. Try applying this today. Did you only have 10 minutes for exercise? That's 10 minutes your future self will thank you for. Only ate one vegetable today. That's one more than yesterday. Modern fitness culture often worships extremes, marathon trainers, keto purists, cold plunge evangelists. But the Stoics would ask, how many of these people sustain their habits long term? Marcus Aurelius, despite his imperial responsibilities, maintained robust health through simple, repeatable practices, modest meals, daily walks, and sensible sleep. He wrote in his journal, "Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. That's the antidote to all or nothing thinking, focusing on the next right step, not the distant summit." Here's a challenge. Pick one area where you demand perfection. Maybe it's your inbox at 0, your house spotless, or your creative work flawless. Today, deliberately leave it at good enough. Leave 5 emails unread. Let one dish sit in the sink. Post the draft with 2 awkward sentences. Notice what happens. The world doesn't end. In fact, you might discover something revolutionary. That good enough often is. Epictetus, born with a lame leg, couldn't compete in Olympic sprints, but he could walk steadily, teach brilliantly, and influence generations. His legacy wasn't built on perfect conditions, but on making the most of real ones. The irony of all or nothing thinking, it often leads to nothing. The person who won't start learning guitar unless they can practice 2 hours daily never picks it up at all. The writer waiting for a perfect 4-hour block of inspiration never finishes their novel. Stoic moderation flips this script. As Musonius taught, we should not give up just because we can't do everything at once. That evening walk, it counts. Those 5 minutes of journaling, they matter. The salad you chose at lunch, even after a pancake breakfast, that's progress. So ask yourself today, where have you been waiting for perfect conditions to begin? What small, sustainable step could you take instead? The Stoics didn't achieve wisdom through grand gestures, but through daily, deliberate choices, the kind that seem insignificant until they transform a life. Your journey doesn't require flawless execution. It requires showing up again and again in whatever form you can. As Seneca wrote, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Even stumbling forward is still moving ahead. Change terrifies us because it whispers a lie. What comes next will be worse than what you know. But the Stoics flipped this fear on its head with a radical principle, amor fati, the love of fate. Epictetus, who was ripped from his homeland as a slave, knew change wasn't the enemy, resistance was. He compared resilience to reeds bending in a storm. The stout oak breaks while the flexible reed survives by yielding. That's the secret, not fighting life's inevitable shifts, but learning to move with them. Consider how this plays out in modern transitions. A promotion requires relocating to a new city, and instead of excitement, you're paralyzed by visions of loneliness and failure. Or after decades in one career, industry shifts demand new skills, and your instinct is to white-knuckle the past rather than adapt. The Stoics would spot the trap immediately, attachment to comfort masquerading as wisdom. Seneca watched wealthy Romans cling to fading glory, writing, "Fortune gives us nothing we can truly own, it only lends. That desk you've sat at for years, the routine that feels like safety, they were never permanent." The sooner we stop demanding life stand still, the sooner we discover our capacity to thrive in motion. History offers striking examples. When the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius lost 9 children to illness, he didn't rage against fate. He poured his grief into writing Meditations, creating one of history's most enduring works of philosophy. Contrast that with modern layoffs where professionals describe feeling erased after losing a job title. The difference, Marcus' new identity wasn't in external circumstances, but in how we meet them. His journal holds the key. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Try this reframe today. Identify one change you're resisting. Maybe it's updating outdated technology at work or your child leaving for college. Now ask, what if this isn't a loss but an invitation to grow? A career coach shared a powerful exercise inspired by Stoicism. Clients facing forced career changes list 3 skills they've gained from past upheavals, not despite them, but because of them. Suddenly, that layoff 5 years ago looks less like disaster and more like the push that led to entrepreneurship. The Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios, takes on new meaning here. When we mentally rehearse change instead of dreading it, we strip it of terror. Picture your biggest fear: selling the family home, starting over in a new field, even aging. Now visualize not just surviving, but finding unexpected gifts, lighter responsibilities, new communities, hard-won wisdom. Epictetus, who had his freedom and livelihood stripped more than once, advised, "Don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." Here's the paradox: clinging to stability often creates more chaos. The executive who refuses to learn AI tools becomes obsolete. The parent who resists their teens' independence breeds resentment. Nature knows this. Forests need fires to regenerate. Crabs must shed shells to grow. Your discomfort with change isn't weakness, it's the friction required for transformation. As Seneca observed, the fates guide those who go willingly, those who don't, they drag. So today, pick one small change you've been avoiding: a difficult conversation, a new routine, even rearranging furniture. Lean into it. Notice how the anticipation was heavier than the act itself. That's amor fati in practice, not passive acceptance, but active cooperation with life's flow. The reed doesn't just survive the wind, it dances with it. Your turn. Comfort seduces us with whispers that life should be easy, that struggle is something to avoid at all costs. But the Stoics saw through this illusion. They knew that seeking only comfort is like building muscles without ever lifting weights. Seneca put it bluntly: difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Think about the irony of modern life. We'll pay for gym memberships to deliberately strain our muscles, yet go to great lengths to avoid any mental or emotional discomfort. We foam roll our quads but stiff-arm difficult conversations. We track our macros but flee from intellectual challenges that might stretch our minds. Take something as simple as boredom. The second we feel it, waiting in line, riding the subway, our hands dart to phones for distraction. But what if those empty moments are where creativity sparks? Seneca observed wealthy Romans who couldn't sit quietly in their own homes without entertainment, calling it a sickness of the soul. Contrast that with his description of true leisure. The time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time. The difference: comfort seeks numbness, growth seeks engagement, even when it's uncomfortable. Modern convenience has wired us to confuse ease with happiness. Elevators replace stairs, streaming algorithms eliminate the work of choosing entertainment, and grocery delivery spares us the hardship of walking aisles. But each eliminated friction point also removes an opportunity to practice resilience. Musonius Rufus taught that voluntary discomfort, like wearing simple clothes or walking barefoot, wasn't about punishment, but immunization. How can someone become brave if they only seek what feels safe? He'd look at our temperature-controlled homes and curated social feeds with concern, not because comfort is bad, but because exclusive comfort leaves us defenseless when life inevitably gets hard. Here's the challenge today: do one mildly uncomfortable thing on purpose. Take the stairs when the elevator is free. Have that conversation you've been avoiding. Read a book that challenges your views instead of confirming them. Notice what happens not just in the moment, but afterward. There's a peculiar afterglow to voluntary discomfort, a quiet pride that lingers longer than any fleeting pleasure. Marcus Aurelius described it as the joy that comes from knowing you've done something difficult well. History's most resilient figures shared this Stoic trait. Teddy Roosevelt, who battled childhood illness through brutal outdoor exercise, called it the strenuous life. Astronauts train in underwater labs to simulate isolation. Special forces operatives practice sleep deprivation. They understand what Seneca knew: comfort prepares you for nothing. Real strength comes from leaning into life's edges, not to prove toughness, but to cultivate the kind of adaptability that turns obstacles into advantages. So next time you're tempted to choose the path of least resistance, pause. Ask yourself the Stoic question: what would my life look like if I never challenged my comfort zone? Not as a punishment, but as a revelation. That morning jog in the rain, the honest feedback you request, the skill you learn starting from clumsy beginnings, these aren't just tasks. They're resistance training for the soul, and unlike gym memberships, this kind of strength costs nothing but pays dividends in courage, creativity, and an unshakable sense of self. The Stoics didn't chase hardship, but they didn't flee it either. They recognized it as the whetstone that sharpens character, your turn to test the blade. Marcus Aurelius began each dawn with a sobering ritual. He'd visualize every frustration the day might bring: rude colleagues, cancelled plans, unforeseen obstacles. This wasn't pessimism, it was psychological armor. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, not to dwell on misery, but to disarm it. Imagine standing backstage before a job interview, palms sweating as you picture every possible misstep. Now flip the script. What if you'd already mentally rehearsed stumbling over a question, recovered gracefully, and continued? That's Stoic preparation in action, transforming anxiety into readiness by walking through fire before it's lit. Consider how most of us approach difficult conversations. We either avoid them entirely or charge in unprepared, hoping for the best. The Stoics would call this negligence. Seneca compared it to sailors ignoring storm clouds until the waves are already crashing. The unprepared mind is shocked by things that could have been foreseen. A manager delaying feedback with an underperforming employee, a parent postponing the big talk with a teenager. These aren't just missed moments, they're squandered opportunities to practice resilience. The interview candidate who stammers when asked about weaknesses, they're not lacking competence, they're lacking rehearsal. Modern psychology confirms this ancient practice. Studies on stress inoculation show that mentally simulating challenges from public speaking to medical procedures reduces actual distress by up to 50%. Marcus Aurelius unknowingly pioneered this technique when he wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." Not as a complaint, but as a vaccine, exposing himself to small doses of adversity to build immunity. Try applying this today. Before your next high-stakes meeting, spend 5 minutes visualizing not just success, but recovery. What if your projector fails, if someone interrupts, if your voice shakes? Plot your responses like chess moves. Here's where Stoic preparation differs from generic, positive visualization. Athletes imagine perfect performances. Stoics imagine perfect adaptability. When a surgeon mentally rehearses complications, they're not inviting disaster, they're ensuring steady hands when it matters most. Epictetus, who trained students in this art, framed it as taking the sting out of surprises. Don't hope events will happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you'll go through life smoothly. That's the paradox. By anticipating obstacles, we stop fearing them. Your turn. Pick one challenge looming this week, maybe a tough negotiation, a family conflict, or even a dentist appointment. Now, borrow Marcus' morning ritual. Write down 3 potential complications, then script your ideal response to each. The client pushes back, breathe, and reframe. Your teen rolls their eyes, stay calm and revisit later. The drill hits a nerve, focus on your breathing. This isn't about controlling outcomes, it's about fortifying your composure regardless of outcomes. As Seneca noted, the bravest sight in the world is to see a great man struggling against adversity. But here's the secret: that greatness isn't innate. It's rehearsed. Blaming luck is like handing over the reins of your life to an imaginary charioteer. You surrender control while still feeling every bump in the road. The Stoics saw this trap clearly. When we credit fortune for our failures, we ignore the real power we have to respond, adapt, and grow. Epictetus, who rose from slavery to become one of history's most influential teachers, put it plainly: it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. That's the heart of Stoic self-reliance, not denying life's unpredictability, but refusing to let it dictate your character. Consider 2 entrepreneurs whose startups fail. One spends months lamenting bad timing, an unfair market, or investors who just didn't get it. The other audits their decisions, what assumptions were flawed. Which skills need development? The first remains stuck in resentment. The second lays groundwork for future success. This isn't hypothetical. Research on serial entrepreneurs shows those who analyze failures objectively are far more likely to eventually succeed than those who blame external factors. The Stoics would nod. They recognized centuries ago what modern psychology confirms: locus of control determines resilience. Academic setbacks reveal the same pattern. A student who fails an exam might blame a tricky professor or unlucky questions, but the classmate who reviews missed concepts, adjusts study habits, and seeks feedback. They're already turning the page. Seneca observed Roman students falling into this trap. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, he wrote, yet men curse fortune when they should examine their preparation. That's the pivot from passive victimhood to active ownership. History offers striking examples. Thomas Edison famously reframed 10,000 failed experiments as learning what doesn't work. Contrast that with athletes who blame referees for losses rather than analyzing their own conditioning. The difference isn't talent or effort. It's the Stoic discipline of distinguishing between what's truly outside your control, the referee's call, and what isn't your fitness level. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, the obstacle becomes the way. Try this reframe today. Recall a recent disappointment, maybe a rejected proposal, a missed promotion, or a strained relationship. Now ask yourself 3 Stoic questions. What aspects truly depended on luck? What could I have influenced differently? And what's one constructive step I can take now? You'll likely find the bad luck category shrinks under scrutiny. That flat tire on your way to an interview, unfortunate, but preventable with an earlier departure. The rude client who rejected your pitch. Perhaps your presentation failed to address their unspoken concerns. Here's the paradox Epictetus uncovered. The more we blame fortune, the more power we give it. He compared it to sailors who blame the wind rather than learning to adjust their sails. Modern life is full of these false surrenders, from algorithms are rigged to nice guys finish last. But the Stoic alternative isn't self-blame, it's strategic focus. When a gardener's plants fail, they don't curse the weather. They improve soil, adjust watering, or choose hardier varieties. So next time you're tempted to blame luck, hear Seneca's challenge. Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling. Your setbacks aren't misfortunes, they're diagnostics, revealing where your preparation or perspective needs adjustment. The entrepreneur's failed venture teaches market realities no MBA can. The student's poor grade highlights gaps no pep talk fills. That's Stoic self-reliance in action, transforming what looks like bad luck into the very curriculum you need to grow. Fortune doesn't determine your path, it reveals it. The question isn't whether life will throw obstacles, but whether you'll use them as stumbling blocks or stepping stones. Saying yes to everything feels productive, until your calendar becomes a minefield of half-finished tasks and diluted energy. The Stoics saw this trap for what it is, a failure to distinguish between motion and meaning. Seneca warned his friend Lucilius about the emptiness of perpetual busyness. Being everywhere means being nowhere. That's the paradox of overcommitting. The more you try to grasp, the less you actually hold. Think about your own week. How many meetings, social obligations, or side projects are truly aligned with your deepest priorities versus simply filling time? Modern culture celebrates the yes man, mistaking availability for ambition and exhaustion for excellence. But the Stoics measured value differently, not by how much you did, but by how deeply you engaged with what mattered. Picture two professionals with identical job titles. One spends evenings networking at every industry event, weekends cramming in online courses, and mornings frantically answering emails. The other attends select gatherings, focuses on mastering core skills, and protects time for reflection. A year later, guess who's more respected and less burned out? The difference isn't effort, it's discernment. Musonius Rufus taught that true freedom comes from knowing what to overlook, a radical idea in our era of FOMO. Your inbox will never be empty. The invitation list will never stop growing. The opportunity pipeline will always tempt with just one more. That's why the Stoic question isn't, can I do this? But should I? History offers a striking contrast. Emperor Marcus Aurelius ruled the vast Roman Empire, yet made time for philosophy, family, and self-reflection. Meanwhile, modern professionals collapse after back-to-back Zoom calls complaining they have no time. The discrepancy, Marcus ruthlessly prioritized. His journals reveal a man who said no to frivolous banquets, unnecessary travel, and petty court politics. He understood what Seneca spelled out. Life is long enough if you know how to use it, but we waste much of it on meaningless activity. Here's the challenge. Open your calendar right now. Circle 3 commitments this week that drain more energy than they return. Maybe that obligatory happy hour, the volunteer role you took from guilt, or the extra project that won't advance your goals. Now apply the Stoic death test. If this were your last month alive, would you still do it? If the answer isn't a clear yes, consider stepping back. Epictetus offered a litmus test. When something attracts you, ask, what will I gain by possessing it? What will I lose? That committee seat might look prestigious, but is it worth the Tuesday nights away from your kids? The consulting side gig pads your bank account, but at what cost to your mental bandwidth? The modern world confuses access with abundance. We can join 12 Slack channels, subscribe to 50 newsletters, and RSVP to every conference, but the Stoics would call this poverty disguised as plenty. Seneca observed wealthy Romans who owned libraries they never read, villas they rarely visited, and closets full of unworn silks. His diagnosis: it's not that we have too little, but that we crave too much. The same applies to commitments. That extra certification might gather dust like those unread scrolls. The networking group you attend religiously could be costing you the solitude needed for breakthrough ideas. Try this experiment for one day. Track every yes you're tempted to give to lunch invites, last-minute requests, even casual "let's grab coffee" suggestions. Then ask, does this align with my top 3 priorities this season? You'll likely spot a pattern. Many automatic agreements stem from habit, guilt, or vague FOMO rather than intentional choice. The Stoic alternative: deliberate exclusion. Just as a sculptor removes marble to reveal the statue within, cutting commitments uncovers your capacity for meaningful work. Marcus Aurelius left us a razor-sharp filter. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? Apply that to your next decision. The PTA needs a chairperson. Your colleague wants help on their pet project. A friend invites you to their cousin's art show. Unless it sparks genuine joy or serves a core goal, practice the Stoic art of graceful refusal. Not with excuses or guilt, but with the quiet confidence of someone guarding their most precious resource, attention. As Seneca reminded Lucilius, no one returns to reclaim lost time. Once scattered, it's gone forever. Your yes is currency. Spend it where it yields depth, not just motion. Your phone buzzes with a podcast notification just as you finish one, while another queues up automatically. Sound familiar? The Stoics would see this relentless stimulation as a modern epidemic, what Marcus Aurelius called the poverty of constant diversion. In his private writings, the emperor noted how rare and precious it was to simply sit quietly in a room alone, not planning, not consuming, just being. That's the heart of Stoic simplicity, recognizing that wisdom grows in the spaces between inputs, like seeds needing darkness to sprout. Consider how we've wired our days: commutes filled with audiobooks, workouts synced to playlists, showers soundtracked by news briefs. Even our leisure is rarely leisurely. The average person spends less than 5 minutes daily in true silence, less time than it takes to brew coffee. Seneca observed this 2 millennia ago in wealthy Romans who couldn't dine without musicians. They fear the sound of their own thoughts. Modern neuroscience confirms the cost. Studies show silent reflection boosts memory consolidation, creativity, and emotional regulation. Those gaps you're filling with content. They're where your brain processes life. The contrast couldn't be starker. Ancient Stoics cultivated cessation retreats into simplicity, while we chase dopamine hits from endless scrolls. Picture 2 gardens, one overplanted with competing species choking each other's roots, the other with deliberate spacing allowing each plant to thrive. Your mind works the same way. Marcus Aurelius practiced daily view from above meditations, mentally zooming out to gain perspective. Could you imagine trying that while binge watching a series? As Epictetus quipped, no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. Depth requires room to breathe. Here's the challenge today: carve out 10 minutes of pure silence. No music, no podcasts, no background TV, just you and the space around you. Notice how your mind rebels at first, scrambling for distraction like a caged animal. That discomfort is the point. It reveals how addicted we've become to external noise. The Stoics weren't anti-technology. They'd have marveled at podcasts, but they'd warn against letting stimulation replace thought. Seneca described letters from his friend Lucilius arriving daily, yet insisted on digesting each one slowly. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. Try this reframe. Think of silence not as empty space, but as fertile ground. Those idle moments waiting for coffee to brew or the train to arrive, they're opportunities to observe your surroundings, untangle a problem, or simply rest your attention. Modern life sells the myth that unused time is wasted time. but the Stoics measured wealth in mental clarity, not sensory overload. As Marcus wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." The irony, in avoiding silence, we're starving the very faculties that make us human: reflection, synthesis, self-awareness. A musician knows rests are as vital as notes. A painter understands negative space gives form to positive. Your mind deserves the same respect, so power down the podcasts on your next walk. Leave your phone behind when you step outside. Let the silence speak. You might discover it's been waiting to tell you something important all along. The Stoics didn't retreat from the world to escape it, but to return to it with clearer eyes. Your turn to try. Imagine filling a jar with water, only to notice a tiny crack at the bottom. Each day, a few drops escape unnoticed. At first, it seems insignificant, but weeks later, the jar sits half empty. Epictetus used this exact metaphor to warn against dismissing small daily efforts, calling it the leak of neglected increments. The Stoics didn't believe in overnight transformations. They practiced philosophical compound interest, the quiet accumulation of tiny, consistent actions that build unshakable character over time. Think about your own life. Skipping one workout feels harmless, but a year of missed sessions leaves you winded climbing stairs. Passing on 10 minutes of reading each night seems trivial until you realize you've lost hundreds of potential learning hours to mindless scrolling. Modern culture obsesses over dramatic breakthroughs, 30-day extreme makeovers, viral success stories, and radical habit overhauls. But the Stoics would spot the flaw. Unsustainable intensity burns out as quickly as it ignites. Seneca observed wealthy Romans who swung from decadent feasts to extreme fasts, writing, "They mistake the violence of change for its value. True growth doesn't shout. It whispers in the small choices we make when no one's watching." A single-page read daily becomes 365 a year. 20 push-ups each morning builds more strength than a single monthly gym marathon. Even Stoic journaling, Marcus Aurelius' famed Meditations, wasn't a grand project, but brief daily reflections scribbled between battles and imperial duties. The irony, we dismiss these micro-actions because their impact feels invisible in the moment. Saving $5 a day seems pointless until decades later. It's a life-changing nest egg. Practicing a language for 15 minutes daily feels futile until you're suddenly conversing abroad. Epictetus, who trained students in gradual self-mastery, compared this to a farmer impatiently digging up seeds to check their growth, disrupting the very process they hope to hasten. The leaking jar isn't just losing drops, it's losing trust in the cumulative power of showing up. Try this reframe today. Pick one area where you felt stuck, maybe fitness, learning, or patience with your kids. Now identify the smallest viable action you could take daily without fail. Not run a mile, but put on running shoes. Not read a book, but open the book. The Stoic secret, starting so small it feels laughable, removes resistance. Musonius Rufus taught that discipline is like calluses. It thickens through friction, not force. Those first 5 minutes of guitar practice with buzzing strings, they lay neural pathways that make hour-long sessions possible later. Here's the challenge: carry a coin in your pocket this week. Each time you complete your micro-action, whether it's writing one paragraph or holding your tongue in a frustrating moment, transfer the coin to your other pocket. At week's end, count the coins. That physical proof of consistency mirrors the invisible growth in your jar. The Stoics didn't measure progress in grand gestures, but in the integrity of their daily stitches. As Seneca noted, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Your tiny steps aren't just moving you forward, they're rewriting your relationship with time itself. The jar doesn't fill in a single pour, but in the patient rhythm of drops that refuse to stop. Death terrifies us because we mistake it for life's opposite, when the Stoics saw it as life's most powerful teacher. Seneca captured this counterintuitive wisdom in a letter to his friend Lucilius. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life every day is never short of time. That's the heart of memento mori, not morbid fixation, but urgent clarity. Imagine two neighbors planning for retirement. One obsesses over spreadsheets predicting their 90s, while the other invests time in relationships and passions now. The Stoics would ask, what if tomorrow never comes for those spreadsheets? Consider how modern life encourages this delay. We save photos for someday albums, postpone difficult conversations, and tolerate soul-draining jobs for futures that aren't guaranteed. The ancient Stoics practiced the opposite. They visualized their own deaths not to incite fear, but to ignite purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote nightly reflections on his mortality, asking, "Is this how I'd want to have spent my final day?" That question cuts through trivial distractions like sunlight through fog. The meeting that could have been an email, the grudges masquerading as principles, the dreams perpetually shelved for stability, all shrink under mortality's lens. Retirement planning reveals this paradox beautifully. Financial advisors stress the importance of compounding interest small, consistent investments that grow exponentially over decades. The Stoics applied this same principle to time itself. Each morning's reflection, each difficult conversation had today, each hour spent mastering a skill, these are deposits in the bank of a meaningful life. Seneca observed wealthy Romans who amassed fortunes but died before enjoying them, noting, "You act like mortals in all you fear and like immortals in all you desire." The Antidote, live as if this year could be your last curriculum. What would you prioritize learning? Who would you finally forgive? What legacy projects would move from someday to today? Try this exercise now. Picture receiving a terminal diagnosis with 1 month left. Not to dwell on morbidity, but to clarify what truly matters. Would you spend those final 30 days refreshing social media? Attending pointless meetings, arguing about politics? Likely not. The urgency sharpens focus suddenly. Reading to your child, walking in nature, or creating art feels vitally important. That's memento mori in action, using death's inevitability to reveal life's essentials. Modern psychology confirms this ancient practice. Studies show people who contemplate mortality regularly make bolder, more authentic choices. The Stoics took this further with a shocking question. What if you've already lived too long, not to encourage despair, but to assess reality? Seneca wrote, "Life is long enough if you know how to use it, but many squander years chasing empty pleasures." Imagine your 80-year-old self watching you today. Would they cheer your current priorities or weep at the wasted potential? This inversion strips away complacency. That project you've been meaning to start, the estranged family member you've been too busy to reconcile with, mortality doesn't negotiate deadlines. Here's the challenge. Borrow the Stoic evening ritual. Before bed, review your day with death's perspective. Ask, if today were my last, would I be content? Did I live according to my values? Leave things unsaid that matter, not to self-flagellate, but to course correct. The Romans kept skulls on banquet tables not to kill joy, but to deepen it, a reminder that this wine, this laughter, this connection is fleeting and therefore precious. Your mortality isn't a threat, it's the very condition that makes your choices meaningful. As Epictetus put it, death smiles at us all we can do is smile back. Not with resignation, but with the fierce gratitude of someone determined to fully inhabit whatever time remains. The clock's ticking isn't a countdown to dread, but a metronome keeping rhythm with your purpose. Waiting for happiness is like holding your breath underwater. You can only last so long before reality forces you to gasp for air. The Stoics saw through the seductive trap of "I'll be happy when." Thinking with brutal clarity, Marcus Aurelius captured this in his private writings. Do not act as if you had 10,000 years to live. The inescapable is hanging over your head. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. That razor-sharp perspective cuts through our modern delusions about future joy. Think about how many times you've told yourself some version of, "I'll finally be happy when I get that promotion," or "Once I take that dream vacation, then I'll relax." But here's what the Stoics understood. The promotion comes with new stresses, the vacation ends, and the goalposts keep moving. Take career advancement as a case study. You grind for years picturing the moment your title changes, imagining the respect, the satisfaction, the financial freedom. Then the day arrives, and within weeks you're eyeing the next rung on the ladder. The Stoics called this the horizon illusion, mistaking the ever-receding future for solid ground. Seneca witnessed wealthy Romans trapped in this cycle, writing, "They exhaust themselves climbing life's mountain only to discover, upon reaching the summit, that the clouds obscured the view all along." Modern psychology confirms this ancient observation. Studies on hedonic adaptation show we return to baseline happiness levels remarkably quickly after major achievements. That corner office you're coveting, its novelty will fade faster than you think. Vacation planning reveals the same pattern. You spend months anticipating 2 weeks in paradise, researching restaurants, counting down days, imagining perfect sunsets. Then you return home and realize the glow lasted about as long as your tan. This isn't to dismiss achievement or leisure, but to highlight how we mortgage present contentment for future fantasies. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, framed it starkly. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The freedom he described wasn't about accumulating, it was about appreciating what's already within reach. Try this experiment today. Pause and notice one ordinary pleasure you're currently taking for granted. Maybe it's the warmth of sunlight through your kitchen window, the reliable comfort of a well-worn sweater, or even the simple miracle of breathing without pain. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That steaming cup of coffee you drank while scrolling, that was someone else's distant dream just a century ago. The ability to video call loved ones across continents. A marvel our ancestors couldn't have imagined. History offers sobering examples. Roman Emperor Septimius Severus spent his final moments not basking in imperial glory, but instructing his sons, "Be harmonious, enrich the soldiers, and scorn all other men." Even at life's end, his mind raced to future concerns. Contrast that with Epictetus' advice. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. The Stoic secret isn't rejecting ambition, it's refusing to postpone gratitude until some mythical after. Here's the challenge. Pick one area where you're deferring happiness, perhaps until you lose 20 pounds, pay off debt, or find a romantic partner. Now identify 3 small joys available to you today within that very situation. Struggling with your weight, appreciate your legs for carrying you this far. Crushed by bills, value the security of a roof overhead. Lonely, cherish the friend who always texts back. As Seneca observed, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. The promotion may come or not, the vacation will pass, but this moment, this breath, this awareness, this capacity to notice is already the destination you've been seeking. The future isn't where life happens, it's just where we store our excuses for not fully living now. We often mistake resilience for mere endurance, the ability to weather storms without breaking. But the Stoics saw something far more profound, the capacity to grow stronger precisely because of the storm. Epictetus, who was crippled by a cruel master in his youth, framed this as alchemy of the soul. Difficulties show men what they are. In crossing them, they discover their own strength. That's antifragility in action, not just bouncing back, but bouncing forward, like bones that heal denser after a fracture. Consider the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. The cracks become the most luminous parts. Now apply that to human experience. A study of Olympic athletes found that those who suffered major early career setbacks, career-ending injuries, funding losses often outperformed their unscathed peers long-term. Why? The Stoic answer: adversity forced them to develop mental flexibility, creative problem-solving, and deeper motivation. It wasn't the trauma itself that helped, but their response to it. Seneca observed this in ship captains who became most skilled not on calm seas, but by navigating squalls. A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. History offers a masterclass in Stoic antifragility through James Stockdale, the Navy pilot shot down over Vietnam. For 7 years as a POW, he endured torture and solitary confinement. Yet he later credited Epictetus' teachings for his survival, explaining, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality." That's the antifragile mindset, holding both unwavering hope and clear-eyed assessment simultaneously. Stockdale didn't just endure captivity, he organized resistance networks, created a tap code communication system, and mentored fellow prisoners, growing leadership skills that would later make him a revered admiral. Your own life holds these hidden turning points. Maybe it was losing a job that pushed you to start a business, or a breakup that revealed untapped independence. The Stoics would urge you to revisit those moments not as painful memories, but as evidence of your latent resilience. Try this exercise today. Recall a challenge where you surprised yourself, perhaps powering through an illness to meet a deadline, or finding courage to speak up when you normally shrink back. Now ask, what strength did this reveal that I didn't know I had? How might this same quality serve me now? Modern psychology confirms what Epictetus knew: stress inoculation works. Just as vaccines introduce weakened viruses to build immunity, manageable struggles prepare us for greater ones. Parents who allow children to face occasional failures raise more resilient adults. Employees who navigate minor workplace conflicts develop tools for major crises. The key is the Stoic distinction between avoiding hardship and meaningfully engaging with it. Marcus Aurelius modeled this during plague outbreaks, not by denying death's presence, but by focusing on what he could control, organizing relief efforts, calming public panic, and finding purpose in service. Here's the twist: antifragility requires voluntary discomfort. Like muscles needing progressive overload to strengthen, our psyches need calibrated challenges. The entrepreneur who voluntarily pitches to tough investors builds rejection tolerance. The shy person attending occasional networking events stretches social capacity. Epictetus' training included sleeping on stone floors and wearing thin cloaks in winter, not to punish himself, but to prove nothing is unbearable once you accept it. Your turn. Identify one current struggle, a difficult project, a strained relationship, a health hurdle. Instead of asking, "How can I get through this?" pose the Stoic upgrade. How could this make me stronger? Maybe the project teaches resourcefulness you'll use for years. Perhaps the relationship friction reveals boundaries you need to set. The workout that feels exhausting today is literally reshaping your heart and lungs. As Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests strong men." But here's what he didn't add: the gold doesn't just withstand the flame. It becomes purer because of it. Your toughest moments aren't just obstacles, they're the forge where your future self is being shaped. Standing by a river, you'll never see the same water twice, yet the river remains constant in its motion. The Stoics saw this paradox as a masterclass in resilience, a lesson from nature on how to embrace change without losing your essence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Flee not from the world's way, nor let yourself be carried off by it. Rather, move as water moves, adapting without dissolving." That's the heart of Stoic observation, recognizing that nature doesn't resist transformation, it embodies it. A tree doesn't curse winter for stripping its leaves, it conserves energy, knowing spring will return. Geese don't mourn the loss of one nesting ground, they adjust their flight path. Nature's wisdom lies in its refusal to waste energy fighting what cannot be changed. Consider the oak and the reed in a storm. The oak, rigid and proud, often snaps under pressure, while the reed bends low to the ground only to spring back when the wind passes. The Stoics would ask which survives longer. Modern science confirms this ancient insight. Coral reefs, when damaged by hurricanes, don't attempt to rebuild exactly as they were. They restructure themselves to better withstand future storms. Your own life holds similar opportunities. That job loss, that failed relationship, that health scare, what if they're not setbacks, but invitations to reroute yourself more flexibly? Seasons offer another Stoic lesson. Autumn doesn't cling to dying leaves, it lets them fall, making space for new growth. Winter doesn't resent its barrenness, it uses the quiet to prepare. When Seneca observed farmers planting dormant seeds in frozen soil, he noted, "They trust the cycle even when they cannot see it." Yet how often do we resist life's winter's periods of waiting, uncertainty, or rest, demanding perpetual summer? The entrepreneur pushing through burnout, the parent refusing to delegate, the artist berating themselves for creative droughts, all ignore nature's rhythm. Here's the challenge: step outside today and observe one natural process, a cloud dissolving, ants rebuilding a disturbed nest, or even your own breath rising in cold air. Ask yourself, how does this mirror challenges I'm facing? A flooded river doesn't rage against the rain, it finds new channels. A pruned vine doesn't wither, it redirects energy to fruit-bearing branches. Your own obstacles might be redirecting you toward unexpected strengths. Marcus Aurelius found solace in this perspective during wartime, writing, "Look at the stars, their endless dance, and remember you're part of that same flow." Modern psychology calls this ecological resilience, the ability to recover by adapting, not just enduring. Think of forest fires. Some trees actually require intense heat to release their seeds. Your most scorching trials could be preparing the ground for something not just surviving but thriving. The Stoics didn't just admire nature, they mimicked its economy. A squirrel doesn't stockpile acorns out of fear but from pragmatic foresight. Bees don't hoard pollen, they distribute it to sustain the hive. When Epictetus advised, "Circumstances don't make the man, they reveal him," he was echoing nature's law. Adversity doesn't create character, it exposes and refines it. So tonight, as you watch the sunset, consider this: that fading light isn't an ending but a promise of rotation. The geese overhead aren't lost, they're precisely where they need to be. And you're not off course, you're simply in the current, learning, like the river, how to hold your shape while forever changing form. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instantly your chest tightens. They did that on purpose. A coworker critiques your presentation, and for hours you replay their words, convinced it was a personal attack. This instinct to take things personally isn't just emotional static. It's a psychological trap the Stoics called prosoch, the habit of over-identifying with external events. Epictetus, who endured slavery and physical disability, offered a liberating reframe. Remember, what insults you is not the person who abuses or hits you, but the judgment that such people are insulting you. That's the crux of Stoic detachment, recognizing that the sting of a slight comes not from the action itself, but from the meaning we glue to it. Take road rage as a case study. When another driver honks or swerves near you, the immediate assumption is they're targeting me. But consider the countless innocent explanations. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital, distracted by a screaming child, or simply didn't see you. The Stoics would point out that your suffering here isn't caused by their driving, it's caused by your insistence that their actions are a commentary on you. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, writing, "It's ridiculous to assume someone else's vice is your harm. That reckless driver, they're likely not thinking about you at all." Their behavior reflects their own stress, habits, or ignorance, not your worth. Criticism reveals the same pattern. A boss notes a typo in your report, and you spiral into self-doubt. They think I'm careless. But what if they're under pressure from their superior? What if they're critiquing the document, not your character? Epictetus trained his students to dissect insults like scientists examining specimens. If someone hands you a gift and you decline it, to whom does the gift belong? The same applies to insults. That's the power move, refusing to accept the emotional gift of someone's thoughtless remark. History offers a striking example. When the philosopher Diogenes was mocked for living in a barrel, he didn't defend his lifestyle. He invited his critic inside, saying, "When you see how little I need, you'll understand how much you lack." The insult became a mirror reflecting the critic's own insecurities. Modern psychology confirms this ancient insight. Studies show people's harsh judgments often reveal more about their inner struggles than their target. That colleague who nitpicks your work, they might be compensating for their own imposter syndrome. The stranger who glared at your outfit, they could be projecting unresolved self-image issues. Try this reframe today. Recall a recent moment when you felt personally slighted, maybe a friend's cancelled plans or a terse email. Now, brainstorm 3 alternative explanations that have nothing to do with you. Perhaps your friend is battling depression they haven't shared. Maybe the sender was multitasking while typing. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, pausing before internalizing external events. As Seneca wrote, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The cancelled dinner isn't the wound, the story you tell yourself about rejection is. Here's the deeper truth the Stoics uncovered: over-personalizing drains agency. When you interpret every critique as a verdict on your worth, you hand others a remote control to your self-esteem. Epictetus, who couldn't control being enslaved, focused instead on what no one could take his judgments. You're just a little soul carrying around a corpse. He'd remind himself not to demean his body, but to highlight the inviolability of his inner citadel. That's the ultimate freedom, letting others' opinions pass through you like wind through a screen, leaving no mark behind. So next time you feel the heat of perceived disrespect, hear Marcus Aurelius whisper, "The opinion of 10,000 men is worthless if none of them know anything about the subject." Your value isn't up for referendum by strangers, critics, or even loved ones. It's anchored in something far more resilient: your capacity to choose what and whom you let define you. The world will always toss stones. Stoicism teaches you to stop collecting them. Waiting for motivation is like leaving your car's engine running all night in hopes the road will somehow appear. It drains your fuel while going nowhere. The Stoics saw this trap for what it was: a clever disguise for procrastination. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, sliced through this illusion with characteristic bluntness. If you want to do something, begin. For action precedes inspiration, not the other way around. That's the heart of Stoic discipline, recognizing that motivation isn't some magical breeze that lifts your sails. It's the muscle you build by rowing even when the water's still. Think about the gym. How many times have you waited for that elusive, perfect day to start lifting when you're well-rested, energized, and in the right headspace? Meanwhile, the seasoned athlete shows up exhausted, stressed, or even unmotivated, but they show up. The difference isn't desire, it's the understanding that discipline creates momentum, not the reverse. Marcus Aurelius faced this daily, ruling an empire while battling chronic illness. His solution, a ruthless morning ritual. When you arise unwillingly, think, I'm waking to do the work of a human being. No fireworks, no pep talks, just the quiet resolve to begin. Creative work reveals the same pattern. Writers don't wait for inspiration to strike. They plant themselves at their desks and start typing even if the first paragraphs are garbage. Picasso produced over 50,000 artworks not because he was perpetually inspired, but because he adhered to a simple rule. Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. The Stoics would nod in agreement. What we call writer's block is often just resistance in disguise, the fear that our output won't match our vision. But here's the secret Musonius uncovered. Action clarifies vision. That blank page terrifies until you scribble the first sentence. The empty gym intimidates until you complete the first set. Modern psychology confirms this ancient insight. Researchers call it the progress principle, the phenomenon where small wins generate motivation, not vice versa. Harvard studies found that the single biggest predictor of a productive workday was simply starting, even if the initial effort felt forced. The Stoics framed this as a matter of agency. You control your next action, not your current mood, Epictetus reminded his students. That's the pivot from passive waiting to active ownership. Here's the challenge. Pick one task you've been postponing. Maybe it's drafting that proposal, starting meal prep, or finally organizing the garage. Now set a timer for 5 minutes and begin, not to finish, just to cross the threshold of initiation. Notice what happens. Resistance crumbles once you're in motion. The writer discovers ideas flowing after 2 clunky pages. The runner finds their stride after the first uphill stretch. As Seneca observed, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, but preparation doesn't wait for a lucky mood. Musonius took this further with his students, making them practice philosophy in harsh conditions, not to punish them, but to prove that excellence isn't contingent on perfect circumstances. He'd ask, would you abandon your principles just because you're tired or hungry? Modern life offers softer but equally revealing tests. That email you avoid because you're not in the right mindset. The budget spreadsheet that feels overwhelming. These aren't tasks, they're training grounds for the Stoic art of showing up. So ask yourself now, what's one thing, just one, you'll do today before feeling ready? Not when the stars align, not when motivation strikes, but precisely when every fiber of your being resists. That's the moment Musonius Rufus would recognize, not as an obstacle, but as the forge where discipline is born. The path forward isn't found by waiting for clarity. It's created by taking the first step into the fog. Walk into any big box store, and the message screams from the shelves, more equals better. More features on your phone, more shoes in your closet, more gadgets promising to streamline your already overcrowded life. But the Stoics saw through this illusion with startling clarity. Seneca, who witnessed Rome's elite drown in luxuries they didn't need, put it bluntly, It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. That's the paradox of materialism. The relentless pursuit of abundance often leaves us feeling emptier than when we started. Consider the modern closet packed with clothes yet nothing to wear. Or the kitchen gadget graveyard, avocado slicers, egg steamers, and unitaskers used once before collecting dust. These aren't just space invaders, they're cognitive thieves. Every unused item whispers a deferred decision, a tiny mental tax on your attention. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, slept on a simple cot and wore plain robes. Not because he couldn't afford more, but because he recognized a profound truth. Excess doesn't elevate life, it dilutes it. When he wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life," he wasn't advocating poverty. He was highlighting the freedom found in sufficiency. The tech industry preys on this "more is better" myth brilliantly. Each year, phones gain features most users never touch, yet we queue up for upgrades, convinced this iteration will finally fulfill us. But Seneca saw this cycle centuries ago. Money has never yet made anyone rich. He watched wealthy Romans amass art they didn't admire, homes they rarely visited, and jewels that brought no joy beyond fleeting admiration. Their mistake, confusing accumulation with enrichment. A modern Stoic might ask, does your smartwatch's 10th fitness metric actually improve your health or just clutter your screen and your mind? Here's the challenge hiding in plain sight: subtraction as strategy. Instead of asking, what else can I add? Try Seneca's razor. What can I remove to gain clarity? Start small. Open your junk drawer, not to organize it, but to empty it completely. Keep only what you've used in the past month. Notice the quiet thrill of space opening up, both physically and mentally. That's Stoic minimalism in action, not deprivation, but deliberate curation. The science behind this is revealing. Princeton researchers found physical clutter overloads the brain's visual cortex, reducing focus. Meanwhile, monasteries have thrived for millennia on sparse quarters, not as punishment, but to clear bandwidth for what matters. Your overcrowded bookshelf, your app-laden phone, even your crammed calendar, they're all variations of the same trap. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher, trained students to live with one cloak and no shoes, not to prove toughness, but to expose a liberating truth. Needs are few, wants are endless. Try this reframe today. Pick one category: your email inbox, your streaming watch list, even your social connections. Apply the 3-question filter. Does this add value regularly? Does its absence diminish my life? And if I encountered it anew today, would I bring it in? You'll likely find whole categories that can go: subscriptions you don't read, group chats that drain you, just in case items that never come in handy. The Stoic secret isn't living with nothing, it's living without excess. Seneca kept fine wine and art in his villa, but only what he truly enjoyed, the difference between his approach and his wealthy peers. Intentionality. His possessions served him, not the other way around. That's the ultimate upgrade no gadget can provide, the space to breathe, think, and savor what remains. As he wrote to Lucilius, until we have begun to go without, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. Your turn to discover what enough really feels like. These psychological traps don't just steal our time, they rob us of something far more precious: our tranquility. Like invisible thieves, they slip into our thoughts and convince us that happiness lies somewhere else, in the next achievement, the perfect circumstance, or the approval of strangers. But the Stoics didn't just diagnose these traps, they handed us the keys to break free. At their core, these escape routes all point to the same truth: real peace isn't found by rearranging the world, but by mastering our perceptions. Whether it's the illusion of control that has us white-knuckling outcomes we can't command, or the hedonic treadmill that keeps us chasing pleasures that never satisfy, the solution is always a return to what's actually ours: our attention, our values, our next right action. Consider how different life feels when you stop confusing preferences with needs. That traffic jam isn't ruining your day. Your demand for an open highway is. The criticism that stings only wounds because you've handed someone else the scalpel. This is the Stoic secret. Resilience isn't about building thicker armor against the world, but realizing most arrows were never aimed at you to begin with. Marcus Aurelius, facing barbarian invasions and political betrayals, still wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That strength isn't passive resignation. It's the active choice to invest your energy where it actually grows, something like a gardener who stops cursing the weather and starts adjusting the soil. The beauty of these Stoic tools is their immediacy. You don't need to overhaul your life to start practicing them, just your next reaction. When envy whispers that someone else's success diminishes yours, borrow Epictetus' lens. He who envies admits superiority. When anxiety spins stories about tomorrow's disasters, apply Seneca's remedy. There are more things to alarm us than to harm us, and we suffer more in imagination than reality. And when the siren song of distraction pulls you from the present, remember Musonius Rufus' challenge. Why compare your life to others when you could be measuring it against your own potential? Your invitation this week isn't to tackle all 30 traps at once. That's just another form of perfectionism. Instead, pick one that resonates most. Maybe it's pausing before assuming negative intent in conversations, or noticing when you're mistaking comfort for happiness. Carry it with you like a philosopher's stone, testing moments against it. Is this thought serving me or enslaving me? The goal isn't to eliminate challenges, but to change your relationship with them, to see obstacles as the very terrain where strength is built. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Yours doesn't have to be the gray of worry or the red of resentment. It can be the steady gold of presence, the deep green of growth. If you found value in this ancient wisdom, join us as we continue unpacking Stoic practices, because philosophy isn't just for dusty textbooks. It's for crowded commutes, tough decisions, and the quiet moments when life asks who you'll choose to be. Hit subscribe and let's keep this conversation going. Your most tranquil self isn't a distant destination, it's the next thought you choose to entertain or release. The Stoics handed you the keys.